And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our very special guest who's with us, a champion of mental health herself, a longtime public servant who champions STEM education, working families, survivors of domestic abuse and the environment during her time in the General Assembly, and the first woman of color and immigrant elected to statewide office in Maryland. Please join me in a rousing welcome for our Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller.
Good evening, everyone. Was that an astounding video or what? Isn't it beautiful to hear from the voices of our children? Linda, I want to say congratulations to your daughter for putting such a profound video out for all of us to share about the importance of mental health and how it affects every one of us, from those that are in elementary school all the way through adults. And the most important lesson that I learned from this video is that we need to hear from those that are going through the lived experiences, right? And this is something Governor Moore and I and our entire administration so much believes in, that those closest to the challenge are closest to the solution. And that's why we've been going around the state during this whole past year and every single day to meet Marylanders where they are, to understand what their concerns are. So it is great to be here with every one of you, advocates, and so many others that have come together to really make a difference when it comes to mental health. So I know events like these are not easy to do. There's a lot of individuals that make events like this possible. So let me just first recognize Linda Raines, CEO of Mental Health Association of Maryland, for her extraordinary leadership here. Now, I looked at Google and learned that this is the second oldest mental health advocacy group in the nation. Is that right, Linda? Wow, that's pretty incredible. And so you've been steering the ship this whole time, so thank you. With others. Dan Martin, thank you for your leadership as well. To all the elected officials that are here, and I just saw my friend, Delegate Heather Bagnell. Is she still here? Well, yes, but I do want to say how very proud I am of her that she was recognized as one of the award recipients for today. And she does an incredible job. And if any of you ever follow Twitter, you should follow Delegate Bagnell. Talk about in ways in which she lifts people up every day. She's the one legislator I know who posts whenever it's somebody else's birthday on her Twitter feed. I mean, I've never seen anybody do that, but I gotta tell you, that is so uplifting for that individual and for others to see that as well, that she puts other people ahead of herself. Imagine that. So I really appreciate that. And also to many of the advocates, providers, and behavioral health professionals that are here today. I extend my deepest gratitude to every one of you for your tireless efforts in improving the lives of Marylanders that are facing when it comes to mental health and substance use disorders. As I said, not just to Delegate Heather Bagnell, but to hearty congratulations to all the award recipients this evening. Thank you for your work and advocacy. And at the Moore Miller administration, we have some pretty extraordinary, talented, and compassionate leaders who are working at the state level to ensure the well-being of all Marylanders. Let me just take a moment and a source of pride to recognize some of them. I'm not sure if they're all here, but Secretary Beatty, thank you for your leadership. Secretary Laura Herrera Scott, Secretary Rafael Lopez, Secretary Vinnie Schiraldi, Secretary Carmel Rose, and Deputy Secretary Alyssa Lord, and Deputy Secretary Ryan Moran, and Special Secretary Emily Keller. There she is, yes. So we love to brag about our extraordinary leaders. It's going to take all of us working together in partnership to integrate mental health policy into public health policy, education policy, economic policy, and our social policy. Here's the thing. None of us get to decide when we're born our race, our gender, our abilities, or our socioeconomic background. And that's why it's essential for those of us blessed with opportunities by chance that we have a profound and moral obligation and duty to fight for those who have been left behind and marginalized, and to see to it that every child deserves equal opportunities to succeed, regardless of the circumstances for which they are born into. Which is why Governor Moore and I have been clear from the get-go where our focus is to uplift every child in Maryland so they can live their authentic lives and reach their full potential. And together with each of you, we are tackling systemic socioeconomic challenges each and every single day and moving the needle towards lifting Maryland families. Last year, together in partnership with the Maryland General Assembly, we permanently extended and expanded earned income tax credit and expanded child tax credit, which benefited over 160,000 Maryland children. And under Secretary Lopez's leadership, crucial SNAP benefits have been restored to thousands of Maryland families. And Secretary Herrera Scott and her team helped safeguard Medicaid coverage for over 5,000 at-risk children. And just last month, we announced the Governor's Office of Children under the talented leadership of Special Secretary Carmel Martin. Last Wednesday, Governor Moore delivered the State of the State address, where he articulated our vision from Maryland. But you know where this vision came from? From Marylanders. And this vision can only be accomplished through partnership. Partnership from the executive branch, the Moore-Miller administration, our legislature, our advocates, nonprofit organizations, corporations, and most importantly, the community itself. Because Governor Moore stated that partnership doesn't keep score. Partnership has no ego. And partnership isn't partisan. Partnership is how we're going to build a state where we leave no one behind. A state that is safer, more affordable, more competitive, and equitable, and a state that continues to serve. The state of the state is our vision. And I'm not sure if you heard, but the governor also did the state plan. So the state plan is how we're going to implement this vision for the next 3 years through 10 priorities with objectives and key performance indicators. So this is what you all get to measure, whether the Moore-Miller administration is really living up to the vision that we set forward. Look, there were a lot of people that said, you know, Governor, you may not want to do that. Why would you want to put yourself out there? Because what if you don't meet those objectives? But here's the thing. The governor knows it's important for us to be as transparent as possible. And you, the public, have to let us know whether we're doing a good job or we're not. We want you at the table. We want you looking at the material that we're going to be putting out there for you to review. And let us know if there are other things that we need to be doing. Maryland has the second highest median household income in the country, but 1 in 8 of our children live in poverty. We refuse to accept child poverty as inevitable in Maryland. I don't need to tell any one of you here that when a child grows up in impoverished conditions, it can significantly impact their well-being and their development. Mental health inequities shows up everywhere throughout the state, from Western Maryland to Baltimore City to suburbia in Prince George's County to the Eastern Shore. So it's from rural areas, suburban areas, urban areas. It doesn't discriminate. Children of all ages, even as young as infants, face mental health challenges. 50% of lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age of 14. I'm sure all of you know that already. 90% of self-harm starts in adolescence, also around the age of 14. And as of 2022, 13% of children and teens in Maryland have anxiety or depression. That's a 30% increase from 2016. And I know each and every one of you has felt this increase in the work that you do. You've heard it from students, you've heard it from parents, you heard it from educators and counselors, and I've heard it too. As I travel around the state, visiting schools, and I visited many, many schools, including Rising Sun High School in Cecil County, Elizabeth Seton High School in Prince George's County, Annapolis High School in Anne Arundel County. And the students are so generous in sharing their stories and their vulnerabilities. And they say that vulnerability is the last thing we want to show in ourselves to others, but it's really the first way in which other people feel connected to you. That's why it's important to share our stories. I also traveled with Secretary Emily Keller and her team to a series of community town halls across the state related to substance use epidemic, and we heard their stories, their struggles. Each of us have those same stories and struggles, and the more we talk about it, the more we can bring sunlight to this issue and remove the stigma that's associated with it, which is why one of the reasons I've taken it on to share my own family's mental health struggles that we face. I came to this country as an immigrant, my whole family did, from India. My mom and dad gave up everything that they knew in the country to come to a country where they didn't know anyone, no one spoke their language, or ate the kind of food that they were accustomed to. My dad struggled to raise a family on his salary as an engineer. But what we didn't know was my dad was suffering from bipolar disorder almost his entire life. And back then, nobody ever talked about it. So we just watched my dad and his kind of bizarre behavior. He would be the most charismatic person you could imagine during the best of his days. And during the worst of his days, he wouldn't talk to anyone and mostly just sleep. And as a result of that, he ended up losing his job because he didn't show up to work when he suffered from the downside of bipolar. When you lose your job, you lose your friends. You lose your social network. And in doing so, he lost his dignity in many ways. And I'll never forget my dad going through that. And once he learned what it is that he was suffering from, and he sought treatment, it was a little late by then, but nonetheless, it helped him. But he suffered a lot from it, and so did his whole family around him. And that's why what is happening here with all of you and that beautiful video of young people to coming forward and talking about their own mental health struggles is so critical to really getting them on the path to road to recovery. And so I just want to say thank you for everything that you all are doing. I'm glad we live in a different time where people are feeling more comfortable to talk about their own stories. So it's important for people living with mental health conditions to know that they're not alone. The stories can set them free, help others with similar experiences, and help all of us in a room to help in their road to recovery. The video, again, was really powerful to bring forth the voices that need to be heard and the stories that need to be told. So to everyone in this room today, know that Governor Moore and I, we hear you, we see you, and we are here to support you in partnership to create safe, inclusive, and supportive spaces where people can share their stories without fear of judgment and stigma. Let us continue to create these spaces and bring everyone to the table. We need more providers from rural Maryland at the table. We need more Marylanders who are involved in harm reduction at the table. We need more students at the table, and we need more Marylanders who work directly in communities with our young people at the table. And we need each and every one of you. This is a complex issue. We're not going to be able to resolve it overnight. I always say the road to progress is always under construction. And so the road to progress to make sure we get a healthy Marylander and make sure their mental health and their well-being is a priority, we're going to need all of us, and we're going to have to do it each and every single day. So thank you for inviting me to speak. And again, thank you for everything that you do.
Well, on behalf of all of us, Lieutenant Governor Miller, thank you so much for your sharing with us and for your remarks and for all the work we're going to get done together as a community.